Tonight we're diving into some of the recent stories regarding real IDs, a push to ban VPNs, age verification, and biometric logins just to get online. Some people are calling it the coordinated destruction of the internet. So, is that a bit hyperbolic? Kinda. But is it true? Yes, pretty much. The answer to those questions depend entirely on how long of a timeline you're talking about. Really, these new laws and policies are just the beginning, incremental steps towards something much, much worse. We'll get into the details in a second. The main point, the true motivation behind these new policies is about tracking who you are and what you say at all times. It's about tying your real identity to your online activity. Ultimately, the end goal is a tightly controlled system, setting up a chokehold on what we can research, what media we're allowed to engage with, and maybe to silence our voices entirely. It's almost as if the establishment wants to corner us in a digital version of legacy media, like the days of network TV with just 5 or 6 controlled sources, making it far easier to frame stories to their benefit and to manipulate the masses on a broad scale. With speech laws popping up worldwide, and this push to tie your online activity to your real identity, well, political dissent suddenly becomes a trap that's terrifyingly easy to enforce. You know, the internet used to be a free frontier. You could speak your mind, laugh, make jokes, explore taboo subjects, whatever they may be, religious stuff, debate politics or philosophy, and you could do so without boundaries. Well, that freedom's slipping away pretty damn fast. Governments worldwide, from the US, UK, Spain, France, the entire EU, Australia, to even places like Turkey and Vietnam, they're throwing up barriers to the free flow of information. They basically want to emulate China's Great Firewall, and the timing is not a coincidence. You have to ask yourself, why are all these countries simultaneously pushing digital IDs, age verification, and biometric logins at the same exact time? Because to me, it feels like a controlled demolition in progress. They're setting the charges to be detonated at a later date. And really, on top of that, you're getting tag-teamed. Government is forcing these policies, and corporations are rushing to implement them. The implications are widespread and affects pretty much everything. Yeah, governments, platforms, and algorithms are in a tug-of-war over what you can say, see, or even think. From Brazil's crackdown on social media to the UK's fight over online speech, censorship is not just a policy, it's reshaping how we connect and understand the world. So how are they justifying this? What's the play? There's a few different versions of their pitch, but it boils down to one thing. They're selling it as a moral imperative. But let's be honest, it's a manipulation. Take age verification laws, for an example. They're being pitched as a way to protect kids from harmful content, adult sites, violence, you name it. And of course, that sounds reasonable, right? I worry about that stuff with my niece and nephew, Kids today are exposed to way too much, way too fast. You're not going to get me to argue against that. But here's the catch. It doesn't stop at keeping kids from getting TikTok brain or from accessing adult sites. To verify age, they want government IDs uploaded, maybe even biometric scans for Google, social media, everything. And it's for everyone. So, by selling it as a way to keep kids safe, I just see it as a way to weaponize your empathy and moral framework to seize control of the information ecosystem. Now, why would they want to do that? What's really behind the move? 'Cause it's the government, alright? They don't really care about keeping your kids safe. Just look at what they've been exposing them to within school systems. Yeah, exactly. After seeing some of those lesson plans exposed on social media, it's insane. So it's clearly not about protecting kids from adult content, right? I believe the truth is even more simple. I believe that all of this is because politicians know they've lost control of the narrative, and they're desperate to take it back any way they can. Simple as that.
If the platforms, whether it's Facebook or Twitter X or Instagram or TikTok, whatever they are, if they don't moderate and monitor the content, we lose total control. And it's not just the social and psychological effects, it's real harm.
So how exactly do these pieces connect? It's all about incremental steps, a slow, deliberate march toward control. Step 1, as I've said, weaponize your morals. They pitch age verification laws and biometric logins as a way to save the kids from harmful content. And who doesn't want to protect kids, right? But of course, there's a catch. It's not just about kids. It's about getting you to upload government IDs or to submit to facial scans to access Google, social media, even news websites. Corporations are already rolling this out, step by step, until every corner of the internet demands your identity. That's the foundation for control. Appeal to your morals and then stab you in the back. Typical. Step number 2, link identity to speech. In Europe, new speech laws already flag dissenting opinions, from memes, immigration critiques, you name it. and tie those directly to your real identity. Political dissent becomes a digital scarlet letter, making enforcement incredibly easy. I mean, there's people being fined or jailed for social media posts. You're living in the dystopia right now. Now, in the US, yeah, we have some safeguards. But as we saw with Joe Biden, a few policy tweaks and boom, we're right there with Europe. But that brings us to step number 3, tighten the noose. Once your identity is tied to every click, governments and platforms can throttle what you see, say, or research. Algorithms already shadow ban dissenting voices. If you add biometric logins and speech laws, well, then they can silence you entirely. Or worse, track you down and punish you for old posts or quote-unquote problematic searches. It's a system where you're free to speak until they decide you're not. This is not about safety, it's about corralling you into a digital cage where a handful of approved sources control the narrative. Yeah, free speech is getting in the way of their criminal enterprise, and they aren't just going to go quietly into that good night, you know what I mean? The establishment's constant lies and their inclination to put their thumb on the scale to sway public opinion has become so egregious that they've backed themselves into a corner. This is a big problem for them, because when the masses stop buying the lies, that's when things get dangerous for people in power. So I'm sure it's not a surprise to you, but our entire world has been built on carefully curated stories, ideals, half-truths, and straight-up fictions. The false representation of reality is the foundation to their entire power structure, and until now, governance has been underpinned by the concept of trust. So, when that trust collapses, when everyone wakes up and realizes that we're being lied to about pretty much everything, well, predictably, that trust collapses, and so does the power of those who rely on it. Now, before we get into the details about those new policies, I'd like to talk about Operation Mockingbird just for a second, because A, it's interesting, and B, it's important. So first, we've got Tulsi Gabbard, Director of National Intelligence, and she was on with Benny Johnson. Operation Mockingbird, the CIA media manipulation scheme exposed by the Church Committee in the 1970s, was supposed to be dead and buried. But Tulsi Gabbard says it's alive and kicking. They're still colluding with corporate media to shape what you think. And yeah, no surprise there. It couldn't be more obvious, really. But then right after that, the corrupt John Brennan had a little slip up. Let's watch the clip, and then afterward, we have to read between the lines.
Not in the truthful way in which it was given?
I think they see that there is politicization at the top of the intelligence and law enforcement agencies, undermining the credibility of the individuals who lead these organizations. And if it undermines the credibility of those individuals, it undermines the credibility of the institutions themselves. So the U.S. intelligence is the most powerful entity on the globe. So many other countries rely on U.S. intelligence that we feed them this information. But if they suspect that anything is being done for political purposes, they're no longer going to look at this information as objective, as apolitical, as accurate information, which really is a shame, because sometimes we need to have a coalition of the willing, coalition of all our partners and allies. And that intelligence really undergirds a lot of the political efforts underway.
So John Brennan's comment that U.S. intelligence undergirds all political movements worldwide, well, that kind of sounds like Operation Mockingbird, doesn't it? It's all about shaping public opinion. That statement suggests that intelligence agencies not only gather information, but also strategically disseminate it to support or manipulate political agendas around the world. By quote-unquote undergirding these movements, the agencies could be seen as providing the foundational support through information, propaganda, or covert actions that fuels the ambitions of various governance systems. This implies a continuity of influence operations, where intelligence shapes not just national, but global political landscapes. And really, this whole thing is kind of funny to me. After it was exposed in the 1970s, people actually believed that the government shut down their Mockingbird system of control and immediately went back to trusting the news. I mean, come on, of course they never stopped. But it does get worse, because Operation Mockingbird isn't just some history lesson. It's being rebooted for the digital age. Take AI chatbots for an example. They're programmed to push legacy media outlets as quote-unquote authoritative sources, regurgitating their stories without questioning the lies, the fabricated anonymous sources, or straight-up hoaxes. If you ask one of these AI chatbots about a news event, and, well, it's serving you CNN or BBC narratives, propping up the establishment's message. And then, of course, we have social media algorithms. They're rigged to amplify corporate media posts while throttling independent voices. Think shadow bans or deboosting for anyone that challenges an official story. And don't sleep on coordinated takedowns. platforms like Facebook or YouTube get pressure from governments and NGOs to suspend accounts or demonetize videos that stray too far from the approved script. It's Operation Mockingbird 2.0. It's the same old control, but with some shiny new tech. And things are getting really, really weird. This is from Tim Hinchliffe over at Sociable. The Pentagon is diving headfirst into the world of generative AI to supercharge its influence operations, and that's according to a Rand Corporation report. Facing fierce competition from adversaries like Russia and China, who are already wielding AI to shape narratives and to sow disinformation. Well, the US military is racing to harness AI's power to craft compelling messages, images, and videos tailored to specific audiences, potentially even mimicking public figures to sway opinions. From creating high-fidelity propaganda to analyzing vast troves of social media data in real time, generative AI could give the Pentagon an edge in the information battlefield. But the report raises a serious concern. With the military's deep ties to Hollywood and past instances of fake accounts linked to US interests, could these tools be turned inward to influence American citizens? And yeah, of course it can. That's probably the main goal. Yeah, so we have the Pentagon using AI to manipulate people as a part of an official campaign. Great. Really, really great. Anyway, let's get back to it. What was I talking about? So it's all about controlling people. And the best way to do that is by controlling information and curating reality. I think they're real worried about the masses realizing that we've been lied to about history, politics, basically everything. Because what happens next? Well, one possibility is that it would be the beginning of a seismic shift in global power. Not slow and orderly, but fast, chaotic, and unstoppable. They want to stop it before it begins. You see what I'm saying? However, joke's on them, because it's already started. The Great Awakening, as it's been dubbed. But so age verification laws are the Trojan horse, and they are weaponizing your morals against you. Governments worldwide are rolling out these laws to quote-unquote protect kids from adult content, and it's pitched as a reasonable solution. And really, that's the first sign of something sinister lurking beneath the surface. It's the government, alright? They're not doing this for your benefit, and they are never reasonable. Red flags should be popping up for pretty much everybody. The UK's Online Safety Act demands IDs, facial scans, or credit cards for over 6,000 sites already, and I believe that includes all social media too. France, Germany, and Australia, well, they're extending it to social media too, tying your accounts to your real identity. In fact, Australia even extends it to search engines and app stores. Now, the timing is very, very suspicious. The entire world is synced up on this, all governments. Over 20 US states and multiple countries have rolled this out recently, and they're synced up. It's a global playbook. The World Economic Forum actually pitched this back in 2020 to curb misinformation about climate change and vaccines. And now they claim it's for kids, but it's all about controlling conversations. According to an article on Sociable, governments and big tech are basically turning the internet into some government-approved wasteland, using digital IDs and biometric facial scans as quote-unquote internet passports. So we have the European Union's Digital Service Act, the UK's Online Safety Act, and Australia's Online Safety Act. All of these places are rolling out age verification mandates that demand government IDs, credit card details, or even face scans to access platforms like Google, social media, and even Spotify. Now by 2026, Europe plans to roll out digital identity wallets, and that's been tested in 5 different countries already. They're basically going to act as gatekeepers, controlling what you can see, say, or do online. And on top of that, the World Economic Forum predicted this back in 2018, saying digital identity would dictate access to information and services. And guess what? In 2025, now it's happening. But here's the trick. They're embedding censorship through hate speech laws in here too. So basically they label political statements like "we need to take our country back" as illegal hate speech, and platforms could face fines up to 6% of their global revenue if they don't comply. And on top of that, NGOs and civil society groups, as they're called, which are empowered by the European Union, can flag content for removal too. So if you have a critique on immigration or environmental policy, you're definitely getting flagged. In the UK, the Online Safety Act pushes content from verified accounts only, sidelining anonymous voices and letting the algorithm dictate what you can see. And Australia's even worse. Check this out. They're proposing continuous facial recognition to monitor users, which of course raises fears of a surveillance state. And they should be afraid of that, because that's crazy. These measures are simply about punishing quote-unquote wrongthink. That's it. The push for digital IDs and biometric checkpoints are creating a world where free speech is revocable, and access to the internet depends entirely on complying with government-approved narratives. Now, is that the world you want to live in? Because I don't. The Electronic Frontier Foundation warns it turns websites into surveillance hubs, and data breaches, that's really the least of our worries. Anonymity dies as every click gets tied to your identity. Everything from jokes to activism or dissent, all monitored, and new speech laws could be easily applied. And people have already tried pushing back against this too. VPNs surged after the UK's act was implemented, with 5 apps hitting the top 10, but now they're hinting at bans. And platforms like YouTube are blocking VPNs right now. Independent journalists, well, they could lose revenue as access gets restricted, leaving tech giants and government-approved sources to dominate. So guess what? If that continues, who knows? In a few years, we're back to a legacy media paradigm, with just a handful of controlled sources. With all information coming from a handful of supposed authoritative sources, which really just means government-approved, all of this could turn the internet into one big gatekeeper, tracking every move under the guise of safety. This is why people are calling it the controlled demolition of the internet. People like Clint Russell nailed it. And I quote, "The push for internet IDs to keep kids safe is a backdoor to kill privacy, anonymity, and enforce censorship. If the establishment has their way, comment on vaccines or immigration, well, perhaps in the future, that'll get you flagged for re-education. Or you might just get a visit from the authorities." As I said, appealing to your reason and morals and then stabbing you in the back. Typical. Very, very typical. So through this little trick, they'll accomplish the end of privacy as a whole, as your online activity will be tied to your personal data, your government ID, facial scans, and financial records. You know what's really funny? Trump was recently in the UK talking about free speech, and Keir Starmer awkwardly said, "We've had free speech for a long time in the UK."
Importance of free speech today.
Well, free speech is very important. I don't know if you're referring to any place in particular. Perhaps they are, but
we've had free speech for a very, very long time here, so we're very proud about that.
Yeah, he said that without a hint of irony. But guess what he did right before that? The UK unleashed their new National Internet Intelligence Investigation Team, a title that manages to be both comically vague and terrifyingly specific. This Frankenstein of a task force snoops through your posts and likes for anti-migrant sentiment. Yeah, this is dystopian novel stuff. Yeah, the UK government has decided that free thought is a public safety risk, which has been the case for quite a while now. They've been arresting people for memes and fining people for silently praying in their head. Yeah, that happened. So yeah, they're gonna keep monitoring your memes and rants because nothing says freedom like the government policing your thoughts. Yeah, the UK's a disaster. However, next, the EU is doubling down. They're reviving plans to scan every private message before you send it, and on top of that, trying to ban VPNs. Yeah, we're in the beginning of the biggest surveillance experiment yet. And Denmark is no different. They're pushing a July draft to force providers to flag quote-unquote illegal content, even in encrypted chats, despite opposition from Germany, Austria, and others. I mean, it's crazy. When Germany thinks you're going too far, man, you've really lost the plot. The Council's legal service calls it a human rights violation, which of course, I think it is. And as I've said, they're also eyeing VPN bans to kill workarounds, tying it to digital IDs. YouTube's already blocking VPNs in Europe, hinting at ID checks, and maybe even biometrics to comply with the UK Act. Essentially, this locks down the internet, ensuring no escape from the surveillance. And then of course we have Mexico, diving into dystopia with compulsory biometric IDs, photos, QR codes, fingerprints, iris scans, sold as citizen protection. It's all a part of a global push. The UK's digital ID rollout, Australia's e-safety codes. Convenience? No, not really. It's about surveillance. In the UK, you're going to need a digital ID to work, to get legal help, or to access your pension, and there's no opt-out. The entire world is basically creating passports to the internet. IDs, facial scans, credit cards, soon to be tied to your CBDCs. This stuff is already here. But anyway, let's wrap up. From age verification laws in the UK, the entire EU really, and Australia, to Mexico's biometric IDs, the internet is currently being walled off under the guise of safety. The European Union's push to scan private messages and block VPNs takes it even further. Every word, every click, tracked. We've got Operation Mockingbird still alive and kicking, with it being revamped for the digital age via AI chatbots, all while the Pentagon's AI deepfakes will reshape reality itself. Now, I'd like to show you a little clip. Bret Weinstein says they are hiding everything.
Ladies and gentlemen, I believe we must zoom out if we are to understand the pattern that we are gathered here to explore, because the pattern is larger than federal health agencies and the COVID cartel. If we do zoom out and ask, what are they hiding? The answer becomes as obvious as it is disturbing. They are hiding everything. It will be jarring for many to hear a scientist speak with such certainty. It should be jarring. We are trained to present ideas with caution, as hypotheses in need of a test. But in this case, I have tested the idea, and I am as certain of it as I am of anything. We are being systematically blinded. It is the only explanation I have encountered that will not only describe the present, but also, in my experience, predicts the future with all but perfect accuracy. The pattern is a simple one. You can see it clearly and test it yourself. Every single institution dedicated to public truth-seeking is under simultaneous attack. They are all in a state of collapse. Every body of experts fails utterly. Individual experts who resist, or worse, in an attempt to return their institutions to sanity, they find themselves coerced into submission. If they won't buckle, they are marginalized or forced out. Those outside of the institutions who either seek truth alone or who build new institutions with a truth-seeking mission face merciless attacks on both their integrity and expertise, often by the very institutions whose mission they refuse to abandon. There is a saying in military circles, once is a mistake, twice is a coincidence, 3 times is enemy action. I have no doubt that given an hour, the people on this panel could point to 100 examples of the pattern I have just described, while finding even a handful of exceptions would pose a significant challenge. We are left in a fool's paradise. Our research universities spend huge sums of public money to reach preordained conclusions. Professors teach only lessons that are consistent with wisdom students have picked up on TikTok, even when those lessons contradict the foundational principles of their disciplines. Once proud newspapers like the New York Times and Washington Post only report important stories after they have become common knowledge. Morticians must now raise the alarm over patterns missed by medical examiners. The CDC has become an excellent guide to protecting your health, but only for people who realize you should do the opposite of whatever it advises. The courts, the last holdout in this ongoing inversion of reality, are now regularly used as a coercive weapon of elites against those who threaten them. We have literally witnessed the Department of Homeland Security attempt to set up a truth ministry and declare accurate critique of government as a kind of terrorism. To my fellow patriots in the West, the pattern is unmistakable. I cannot tell you with any certainty who they are or what they hope to accomplish, but I can tell you that we are being systematically denied the tools of enlightenment and the rights guaranteed in our Constitution. We, those who remain dedicated to the values of the West, must fight this battle courageously, and we must win. For if we do not stem the tide, the result will be a dark age that differs from prior dark ages only in the power and sophistication of the coercive instruments wielded by those who will rule us.
You know, that speech exposes the attack on truth. Every institution, from universities, newspapers, media rooms, websites, to the silenced experts and marginalized dissenters, they seem to be seeking to dismantle enlightenment in general, and to stop our ability to question anything. And I believe he's right. This is not a coincidence. Control information, control people. That's the game. By stripping away privacy through digital IDs and age checks, banning workarounds like VPNs, and flooding us with AI-driven lies, they're not just monitoring us, they're steering us. You know, psychological operations have a term for it: nudging. Just a little nudge here or there, and then you exploit social dynamics. And it's just that easy. For most of it, groupthink and the need for validation takes care of the rest. Every story we've covered points to one goal: a gated internet where your thoughts, your voice, your reality is dictated by those in power. Weinstein warns of a dark age driven by sophisticated control. If we let this continue, let governments and tech giants lock down the web, rewrite truth, and silence dissent, that's exactly where we're headed. But we're not there yet, alright? I'm not dooming on it. But there's one really important question. Are we gonna fight for the open internet before it's too late? Will people fight for our right to know, to think? Well, you better. And the hour's late. Once again, this is HelioWave. If you like the content, like, comment, and subscribe. Share the video if you want to. If you're in a position to, consider subscribing on Locals, or you can use PayPal. As always, make sure you disobey those true fascistas, and yes, I do hope you have a good night.